Oh, so our second speaker is Dr. Dagmar Meyer. Dr. Dagmar is a one-stop shop vet. When I say one-stop shop, I mean, if you want small animal medicine, she's your go-to person. You want to talk about public health, she's on top of it. Talk about wildlife medicine, she's there as well. Dr. Dagmar is the director of World Veterinary Services Operations in Malawi, and we are so happy to learn from you, Dr. Dagmar. But before I hand the screen over to you, I would like to go through the key learning outcomes. So Dr. Dagmar will talk to us about managing anesthesia in lions and other carnivores. By the end of her talk, you should be able to understand the key principles of predator immobilization, including logistics, drug selection, and safety. Secondly, you should be able to identify appropriate anesthetic drug combinations for lion and other predators, emphasizing reversibility and reduced side effects. Thirdly, you should be able to apply proper techniques for dirty, monitoring vital signs, and managing anesthetic depth to ensure animal and team safety. Lastly, you should be able to recognize species-specific challenges and complications in carnivores and carnivore anesthesia, including temperature regulation, cardiorespiratory risks, and recovery management. Thank you so much, Dr. Dagmar. Over to you.
Thank you for joining me today. It's a real pleasure to speak to you about one of these really fascinating and challenging aspects of wildlife work, the anesthesia in lions and other predators. As we know as vets, no anesthesia is ever a one-size-fits-all process. And when it comes to lions, every procedure carries both excitement and a lot of responsibility. Today, I'm trying to talk you through how we plan, monitor, and manage the anesthesia in these incredible animals. And I'll give you some real field experience examples. And by the end of it, I hope that you will not only understand the technical aspects, but also appreciate that it takes a lot of teamwork, a lot of preparations, and respect that go into every lion immobilization. Even if you think you know it all, the next one might surprise you. So the objectives of this lecture is to understand the approach to the chemical immobilization of predators, some basic logistics, common drug combinations that we're using, potential complications, and similarities and differences between species. I mean, there's a lot of predators. I won't be able to go through many of them, so I'm focusing on lions, but then I will mention a few other species as well at the end of it. The most common reasons why we immobilize lions are to fit tracking collars onto them, and this is for one aspect, monitor of the population and their behavior, but it's also very important to protect communities around any reserves from human-wildlife conflict in case these animals break out. We might require to treat any injured animals, especially if they are human-inflicted wounds. I mean, it's amazing what these animals do to each other. Sometimes there's literally half the jaw hanging off, but it's obviously if it's a natural wound and they were fighting with each other, it's amazing how they recover from that. And obviously we are not treating any sort of wounds that are just happening in the wild, but if it is human inflicted, especially snare wounds, gin traps, anything like that, obviously we would intervene and treat these. Transport of lions, for example, if they broke out of the reserve, to bring them back in to avoid any human-wildlife conflict. So it's important to be able to transport them. Translocations to other reserves is another reason to immobilize them. Population control, I will talk a little bit about that later, why that might be necessary, and the options that we have for lions in that. And for maybe some teams for any sort of sampling for research. It's not something that we're doing here, but obviously that's another reason to keep track on any sort of diseases or any other research questions. Considerations before immobilizing predators. are social dynamics, needs to be taken into consideration. What is happening? How big is the pride? How many other lions do you have around you? That is important to have that in the back of your mind during immobilization, but also during the reversal or the release of animals. I will touch on that a little bit later. They are obviously potentially very dangerous animals. They can bite and scratch you. They can also pass on some internal parasites for free while you're there. So there is zoonotic risks, especially with Echinococcus, Toxoplasma. So it's important to have that in mind and either wear gloves or make sure to disinfect your hands after dealing with these animals. And also important to have in mind other infectious diseases. That is important for certain species, especially rabies and distemper when it comes to the wild dogs. So how do we sedate the lions? Obviously, we need a remote way of delivering the drugs. There is no way that we can hand inject these animals. So we need potent anesthetic agents to do this. And some of these drugs that we are also using, for example, in the small animal practice. So when it comes to butorphanol, medetomidine, it's very important to be aware that there's different concentrations. And whenever you are immobilizing animals, make sure that you have the right concentrations. For example, butorphanol comes at 10 mg per ml. It also comes at 50 mg per ml. Medetomidine comes at 1 mg per ml and 20 mg per ml. It's very important you make sure you have the right drug, because either your animal won't sleep or your animal is too deep and it's very dangerous. So so some of the drugs that we are using in lions are obviously used for other animals as well. And it's very important to be just be very considerate all the steps of the way. As well, when you are making up drugs, for example, like I talk about Solitil, label any bottle once you make up the drug to ensure to state on the bottle what is the concentration of that drug. So we need potent anesthetic agents, and these drugs should result in a rapid induction, an adequate level of immobilization. We would like to have limited adverse cardiorespiratory effects, and the drug should be reversible to allow for a fast recovery when we're done. So how do we deliver the anesthetic drug? It was great that Isaac has already touched on that. So there's different darting systems. So there are different darts and different darting rifles. When it comes to the darts, you probably all have heard about, we have the Dun-Inject darts and we have the new darts. The Dun-Inject darts potentially can be used multiple times unless your lion bites them out and damages it, and that's it. That's when it ends up being very expensive. But usually, so they cost more, but you can use them several times. There are a lot of steps to make up the dart. So you have a drug chamber where you fill in the drug. Then you fit the needle. You need to choose the appropriate needle size. For example, for lions, it's usually we use a 3 centimeter long needle, diameter 1.5 to 2 millimeter length. So you put the needle on. It has side ports to deliver the drug into the animal on impact. The side port needs to be covered with a sleeve. And then you pressurize this dart. So this is the air chamber, will be pressurized. And then you put a flight at the end of it. So on impact, this air chamber, like this pressurized chamber, is driving the plunger forward. And on impact, the sleeve moves backwards, and the plunger is moved forwards, and the drug is administered with the side port into the animal. So there are quite a lot of steps in this. It's definitely very important in the beginning, especially when you are new and you're nervous. There's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. If you pressurize this dart while the sleeve is not on, it will just go everywhere in the air. So obviously this is also a safety risk. So they are great. I'm using them a lot, but it needs concentration. There are quite a few steps involved to make up this dart. When it comes to the new darts, it's literally a one step. You have a long needle that is a filling needle that needs to reach into the drug chamber. You put your drug into that drug chamber, and then your dart is basically ready. The plunger, there is an explosive charge here, so on impact, that plunger is moving down, and the drug is delivered as well, usually with side ports, or there's different needles there as well. So those are the two major systems that we're using, and then the darting rifles, as well, Isaac have touched on that, Dun-Inject CO2 powered new dart is powder charge. So those are the two important darting rifles. When it comes to select the correct dart, it's about the needles, the dart size, and the dart type that you're choosing. And then you look at the needle, the length, the thickness, and usually what we use is barbed needles. So that means when the dart hits, it actually stays in the animal because the barb is preventing that it's falling out again straight away. So once we look at the drugs that we are using to immobilize lions, it's important to know we are avoiding opioids because there is a high risk of severe cardiorespiratory depression. When I say that we're mostly avoiding it, we do use butorphanol in some of the combinations, but we are not anymore like using ethofentanil, any of these really potent opioids for lions, because they are very sensitive. So usually most of these drug combinations are a combination of cyclohexylamines, benzodiazepine combined with alpha-2 adrenal receptor agonists. That's usually the drug of choice for predator darting. And I'm now mentioning a few of the drugs that we are using, especially for the lions. So the common drug combinations or the common drugs are Solitil, then Solitil combined with medetomidine, and then a few other combinations, BAM, BMM, and KBM. I will mention them just now. So Solitil is basically, historically, is what was used most of the times and actually as a sole drug. So Solitil is tiletamine and solazepam. Tiletamine is roughly three to four times more potent as ketamine. It's causing so that combination with a benzodiazepine is causing a rapid induction, and it has a very wide safety margin and minor cardiorespiratory side effects. So all of that is really good. The only problem is that it is non-reversible. So the lion will have to sleep off the anesthetic, and it's resulting in a long recovery time. During this recovery period, a lion is vulnerable to attack from other animals, and also it may injure itself with repeated attempts to stand, because once the animal is coming around, it's a very slow process. And basically the same that you are seeing in domestic cats when they're trying to get up and they're falling over and they're hitting their heads and they're rolling around, we do see the same in Solitil. So all in all, the duration of immobilization is quite long. So usually if you just need a collar change, your animal is down really quickly, you approach it quickly, you change the collar, but then you're sitting there at least another hour to see that this animal is then waking up. So it takes a long time. And that's why I'm actually one of the most common combinations that we are using is Solitil and medetomidine, because by adding in this alpha-2 agonist of the medetomidine, you can reduce the dose of Solitil by up to 75%. So it's making a huge difference. And because the medetomidine is reversible, we basically give the drug, and after approximately 45 minutes, you can reverse the medetomidine, and it's resulting in a much faster recovery. So Solitil, medetomidine is probably the drug of choice that you're using in lots of the lion immobilizations. Then we have these abbreviations like BAM, BMM, KBM. So BAM stands for butorphanol, azaprone, medetomidine. BMM, butorphanol, medetomidine, midazolam, and KBM, ketamine, butorphanol, medetomidine. So these are different injectable anesthetic combinations used for chemical immobilization alliance. There are some key differences in their specific drug components, their induction time, and their recovery characteristics. They all have their place. I would say, like, we're using them more for cheetah and wild dog anesthesia. So basically more in animals that we really want them to wake up much faster, because when you look at all these drug combinations, especially the BAM and the BMM, you don't have ketamine in there. So it's a reversible anesthetic. So you can, the butorphanol is your opioid part of the combination. So you can reverse that. Sorry. And the medetomidine you can also reverse, okay? And then you have asaprone. It's a neuroleptic that provides some additional sedation and reduces distress, and midazolam as a benzodiazepine. So they are not, the animal will stay a little bit more sedated, but they don't last that long. So basically you can reverse these animals very quickly. So it's important in animals that we don't really want to have down very long. I do have one list like that. I just put in, like certain, like these 3 drugs. If you want to compare them, it's also very individually. Like, for example, with BAM, when I'm using that in lions, there is definitely some spontaneous arousal, and often I would, when I get to the animal, I would straight away give like a top up with some ketamine. You do get a feel for it. So it's definitely known in lions that there is some chance of that they are not very deep. But then, you obviously combine it with some other drugs. So yeah, so there's definitely some great combinations available. But I would say lions, Solitil, medetomidine, and when it comes to other predators, you're probably more looking at these other drug combinations. What is great about BAM is it actually comes as a pre-mixed solution already with the butorphanol, asaprone, and medetomidine in the bottle. So it's very easy to dose. It's literally 1 ml for 10 kilograms. So it's a very small amount of drug that you need in your dart volume, and it makes it very nice and very, very fast to draw up. So when we then talk about the reversal, so it's very important, obviously, that we reverse these animals as soon as we're done. We want them up again. So these reversal drugs are usually, so you can either give them intramuscular or intravenously. For the predators, we actually like to give them intramuscular. And usually I actually give them, especially atipamezole that comes in very high concentration, like 20 mg per ml or even 50 mg per ml. We like to give them, we like to dilute them with a little bit of sterile water for injection. And then we give it at different sites and we massage the muscle quite well, just so that it gets absorbed nicely. You can split that reversal IM and IV, but it's actually, the recovery is sometimes so fast that these animals are falling over. There's a higher risk of hurting themselves. So we usually just give that intramuscular, and intramuscular, these animals are normally waking up within 20 minutes. And then it's just important to watch them until they are fully awake. Naltrexone is the reversal of the opioid. So if you use, for example, BAM or BMM, we would give a reversal for the alpha-2 agonist, and we would give a reversal of the opioid. Some people also combine atipamezole with yohimbine. There is mixed feedback, basically, if you should do it or the benefits of it. What I have heard from quite a few colleagues is atipamezole has a shorter duration of time that it's active. So if you only give atipamezole, maybe there's a risk of the animal renarking, which means that if the medetomidine is still active in the bloodstream, but your atipamezole is already metabolized, the animal could fall asleep again. We've never seen it. I mean, not that we are with the animals necessarily hours later, but we never saw any issues, that somebody reported an animal being asleep. But so basically some people combine atipamezole with yohimbine because yohimbine has a longer duration of action. So yeah, it's something to have in mind, that this is also a possibility to give both. So when it comes to the logistics of a lion capture, obviously they are nocturnal animals, especially like at the moment, you can imagine how hot it is, for example, down in Chihuahua, in the Majetti Reserve. It's very hot and they are active very late. They would like to just lie around all day, and then we would only really, we always call the lions up in the afternoon, late in the day. It takes a teamwork. It's a heavy animal to lift. It needs good communication. It needs a really great team to work together. There needs to be good communication because there is safety involved for the entire team. So yeah, so we would head out in the afternoon. You bring a bait, like any sort of carcass, an impala, or usually, if it's a water bug, we maybe just take half of the animal, keep the other animal for another call-up. And then we fix this bait to a tree, so that the animal can't pull it off. So we tie it to a tree with a steel cable or a chain. We then play the distress call of a prey animal from a loudspeaker that is hidden quite high up in a tree. These lions are big cats. They like to play with things. I've seen lions trying to climb up to the collar to take it down. So you have to also have that in mind. And if you have these animals then what we call anchored at the carcass, the darting is mostly then possible for lions while they are feeding. Maybe shy animals that are not habituated by several call-ups, they might require some pre-medication. So that is also possible, that you have a drug like midazolam or medetomidine in the bait. So that is also a possibility. And then when the animals are feeding on the carcass, you can then make up your dart, and then you dart from the vehicle. So all of this is done from the vehicle, definitely not on foot. That is not safe at all. So all of this is happening from a vehicle. You're choosing the large muscle masses of the hind or front legs. The shoulder is a good one because lions do like to pull out the darts. And like I said, if you're using a dun inject, that is the end of your dart. And the shoulder, they can't really reach it very well. And yeah, it seems so. That's usually what we use. But yeah, there's other muscle masses as well. You then watch for the signs. So usually 2 to 3 minutes after the dart entered the animals, you should see the first signs that the animal is showing the first signs of getting sedated. Usually 10 minutes is the earliest time that we would approach the sedated lion. We drive really close to it with the vehicle. We are then driving close to the animal, and we're then really carefully getting out and making sure this lion is asleep. So, which is usually a slap on the bum and just seeing that there's no reaction. You check for any sort of flicks of the ears. Yeah, sometimes they will need a top up. So yeah, so you just have to be careful, and you have to always communicate with the team what is happening and that they stay safe. Only once the animal is really fast asleep and you're sure, then you would also talk to the rest of the team that they can come. You have to stay calm and quiet around a sedated animal, especially with the alpha-2 agonist. It's possible that there is spontaneous arousal. That's also the reason why we place blindfolds and we put earplugs in, because any of these stimuli can cause the animal to maybe get light again. So yeah, it's important throughout the procedure that it's important. Also, the blindfold, it's important to protect the lion's eyes from any light and to prevent retinal damage, especially with ketamine. Also, like the eyes are open and you just want to, yeah, avoid the stimuli, but also protect the eye. And yeah, we work systematically in the team. We keep records of the vital signs and any maintenance drugs. So basically everything needs to be recorded. So when it comes to the anesthetic monitoring, that is really the same for any animal that you have under anesthetic. So monitoring is essential to recognize rapidly any expected or unexpected complication. And that way you can able to prevent or you can intervene early by detecting any trends. So it's important to really have a rest rate, have a heart rate every, ideally every 5 minutes. And this is all increasing the safety for the animal and the staff. Yeah, first thing is always check the airway, especially if the animal might have vomited while it fell asleep. First thing is, once we know the animal is properly asleep, you open the mouth and make sure that there is no food inside the mouth that could cause aspiration pneumonia. And then you check the breathing and get a regularly respiratory rate, regular heart rate, the temperature regulation. It's very important to actively monitor and manage the lion's body temperature. Usually it's hyperthermia, that they get maybe too hot, and then we need to look at cooling techniques for the lion. We can check the mucous membranes color, and we use a pulse oximetry to check the SpO2 levels as well. And then to check the anesthetic depth, very similar as well what you do with smaller animals. We check for the presence or the absence of reflexes, such as the ear flick reflex and the withdrawal reflex. We check the eye position. Usually, obviously, we have the blindfold on, but we move the blindfold and look at the eye. If it's central or if the eye is down, we check for blink and corneal reflex and the jaw tone. And that is definitely not what you have in domestic animals. It's a big jaw. But it's very good to get a feel for the jaw tone. Like when you approach the animal after 10 minutes, even though they are already sedated, it's not that relaxed yet. But then if you check later on, you get a feel for how that big, heavy jaw is relaxed, and you notice once it gets tighter again. It's actually, so for longer anesthetics, if you do a surgery on a lion, the most reliable indicator of the anesthetic death is probably the jaw tone. In my experience, I can see the heart rate usually stays steady at 60. The respiratory rate is usually between 12 and 16. Hardly anything changes there. The jaw tone is a very, very reliable part of the anesthetic monitoring, and very important that we keep an eye on that. If we do something like a vasectomy, for example, we also give additional local anesthetic. So we use lidocaine there. Which again is very important that everybody knows that is done, because it will also because you now don't have that pain stimuli when you do the first incision, for example, or you work on the animal. Even more important that you keep a close eye on that anesthetic death, just to make sure the animal stays asleep deeply, because now you don't have any pain stimulating the animal. We are maintaining the anesthetic when we do something like, an hour-long anesthetic for a vasectomy. We are always placing an intravenous catheter, and we are then giving the top up of ketamine. We are giving ketamine intravenously every 20 minutes, and every full hour we are giving a combination of midazolam and ketamine. And then we are obviously keeping records of that, and so that we can also know at the end, okay, when was your last top up of ketamine, so that we know when we reverse the animal, so that it's a calm and so that it's not like a violent recovery. Like I said, intravenous access we usually do. Sometimes it's surprisingly difficult to get an intravenous access into lions. It can be much harder than in cheetah and wild dogs. So yeah, have that in mind. You always think it's a massive animal, it should be very easy, but it not always is the case. So yeah, so that's important to have an intravenous access for any emergency drugs. We also give fluids throughout the procedure, and it's just really, really important for any sort of emergencies. Oxygen is important to have. If you can have an oxygen cylinder with you so that you can give oxygen as well, especially when you look at when your pulse ox readings are not great, then you can just give supplemental oxygen. So anesthetic complications in lions, yeah, it can include adverse reactions to drugs. It can be respiratory depression. It can be cardiovascular problems, or any sort of issues during recovery. There's obviously a lot potentials, especially a major challenge is that these wild animals that we're working with are immobilized remotely. We have no idea of we don't have any physical exam. We don't know what this animal is like. We don't know if they been running after an animal for a long time. Did they do a kill that day? Do they have a full stomach? You know, do they struggle with any other problems? Do they maybe have an infection going on? So all of these things we have to have in mind. We have no idea about that animal that we are sedating. So obviously that is that is increasing the risk of any side effects. And like I said earlier, they often vomit. So after the dart, while they are actually eating on the carcass, they might vomit, and then they might fall asleep in it, which is a little bit gross, but that happens quite often. So there is a risk of aspiration. That's why it's important to avoid any complication, to have a look that there's that the mouth oral cavity is empty when you get to them. Many anesthetic drugs can cause slowed or shallow breathing, so respiratory depression. It's important to check for that, and also for hypoxemia. So I said, we're looking with the pulse ox, and we administer oxygen with the cylinder that we're taking with us if needed. Hypertension or hypotension are common, really. Depending on the drug protocols, it can happen that you have a high blood pressure or low blood pressure. That's another reason why it's good to have intravenous access, and you can give fluids to counteract that. Hypothermia, let me just go back. Hypothermia is possible that they get very warm, anything like higher than 39.5, 40 degrees. We will do some cooling of the animal. What we usually do is to have cool packs, and then we have them in a cool box, and we wrap them in some tea towels and place them in the groin area, under the front leg, inside the ear pinner, and just that way to try and cool them down. We can also put an ice pack on the IV fluids. And actually oxygen supplementation is also effective. And obviously if the animal is too light, that's a very important complication. So we need a very close monitoring to keep the team safe, and that we need to give the top-ups when needed. With our protocol, if we know this animal needs to be asleep for at least an hour, we stick to our protocol that we have. So basically we give every 20 minutes, we do give a top-up of ketamine and ketamine midazolam, just to be on the safe side. And it's a very good way of keeping the animal asleep for longer. And especially if you're thinking you might travel with this animal, you're looking at a translocation, very important that you keep a close eye, that you keep them closely monitored, and write down your last top-ups so that you make sure your animal is asleep for the whole journey. So for the recovery, we administer the reversal agents for the alpha-2 agonists and the opioid, if an opioid was given at the end of any procedure. So we are placing the animal on the ground somewhere away. Like we then pull the animals, the vehicles out, so the animal has a calm and quiet place to wake up, so just to ensure controlled, calm, and fast recovery. Because we need to make sure the the lion is in a secure, quiet area away from potential predators or other disturbances until it is fully recovered. And we need to closely continue to monitor the lion throughout the recovery phase until it is fully awake and responsive. So it's very important, and it is our job to stay with the animal until we are 100% sure they are now safe, and only then we will pull away. So I'm just showing you a video of a lioness waking up. So you can see she's still staggering. Obviously, still the effects of the immobilization drugs in her system, but this is a nice recovery. You know, she's not. Sometimes they're banging their heads on the ground in the attempts to get up. But yeah, so it's you can see the effects, but it will take a while, and you basically have to pull the vehicles away, but have the animal still in good view, and just take your time. And it definitely, if you do that intramuscularly, it will take at least 20 minutes, but it is important to do it slowly, because if you would give it intravenously, you can just imagine how quickly they wake up. But there is still some ketamine in the system, and and it's really not nice to see how they're then just throwing their heads on the ground, and there's definitely danger that they might injure themselves. This is just a bit of a, well, I want to say fun. I mean, if you're the driver of this transport, it's not much fun, but it's a video that went a little bit viral last week in South Africa after a transport of a lion that didn't quite go to plan. So it's obviously the person filming who's behind that transporter. And just see what's going on there. And yeah, it also ended up on it ended up in a newspaper, and some animal welfare group said there needs to be more animal welfare in animal transports. Actually, it turned out that this animal was sedated, but obviously for a longer transport, you don't need to have them deeply sedated anymore. Apparently, it was in this transporter of 2.5 meter high. Were the walls of that crate, and the driver opened just a window on the top, and it wasn't apparently very, very big, but it was also 2.5 meters high. But this lion managed to jump out of there. So always expect the unexpected. Apparently, this lion just walked a bit, laid down in the shade of a tree, and then they called another vet in the area, and the vet sedated the animal again, and it was safely. Nobody was hurt. No person and the lion were hurt. I mean, I guess maybe strain after that jump, but it just brings home again what we are dealing with and what can potentially happen with these animals. Okay, so I quickly want to touch on the population management and why it is needed. Whenever people hear about contracepting lions, they're like, oh, but why? And why can't they just have as many cubs as they want? The thing is really that if you have an open system, like all the parks would be connected to each other, and lions, for example, if you take the Majeti setting, the Malawi setting, if lions could move between Liwonde and Majeti, and they could just walk through Malawi, you would obviously not need any population control, because you would then just have a good mix of their genetics. You have some naturally occurring infanticide, which means that some dominant males are killing the cubs of another, of another male, and basically that's usually how you keep the population growth to a stable level. And usually the survival rate of cubs is between, it's quite low, it's like maybe 10 or 20% in lots of the open reserves or the bigger reserves. If you have a fenced reserve, and obviously, in some settings with high human population density, you have only fenced reserves, then you do need to closely monitor and manage the lion population, because At some point, these lions are all related to each other. They are not, you don't have infanticide, because that cub that they are looking at could potentially be theirs or their brothers. And yeah, so basically this natural occurring system is not really happening anymore. So yeah, you need to keep that number of lions in balance, and to avoid breakouts, which would then cause human-wildlife conflict. And also what you would see with juvenile lions, that you have a collapse of the prey base, like it would literally deplete the park of any prey that lives there. So for the population management in lions, there are a few options. There is the hormonal contraception of the females, which is an implant of a drug called deslorelin or suprelorin. And then you have the vasectomies in males. The contraception of females lasts roughly 2 years, and then you would have to implant another one of these chips. The vasectomies in males is permanently. Unilateral hysterectomy, I've never done that, but that has also been done in the past. It just means that the lions have a smaller litter size than with both horns of the uterus. And this is just a picture here on the left of you see what we do in the vasectomies is we remove a part of the vas deferens. So you see the large spermatic vessels on the right, and then on the left side is the vas deferens. So this is where you remove a few centimeters. And you can even then, when you close the tunic vaginalis, you can leave one part of that vas deferens out and the other one inside. So there is definitely no chance of them to fuse again. And this was the setting on an evening where I did 2 vasectomies on these 2 brothers. They are actually the same brothers that fell asleep with the paws on top of each other on the carcass in that earlier picture. And yeah, so we are basically doing it up on a pickup, and they're monitored like that. You can see the monitoring chart here with my colleague. You have a sterile field, and then this lion is already prepared. So you can see their covers on their head, so the blindfold, earplugs, and then the person who's doing the anesthetic monitoring is giving the top up intravenously every 20 minutes. So that is our field clinic for when we do some vasectomies. And I'm now playing this video. I hope it all works with my connection here. And this is a video of how we do these vasectomies in Majeti. 22 years ago, Majeti Wildlife Reserve in southern Malawi was barren. All wildlife had been poached and tourists no longer visited. There was simply nothing left to see. But in 2003, African Parks signed an agreement with the Department of National Parks and Wildlife to manage Majeti. Within the first year, nearly 600 animals were translocated into the park. Today, Majeti thrives. It is home to the Big Five, along with cheetahs, wild dogs, and giraffes. Lions were reintroduced in 2012, and by 2017 there were around 10 lions in the park. Now that number has grown to at least 80. As a closed reserve, managing the lion population is critical to prevent breakouts and to protect the prey base. 2 years ago, WWF began assisting with population control, starting with contraceptive implants for female lions and more recently, vasectomies for males. Our process begins by identifying target groups using GPS locations from collared lions. With radio telemetry, we locate the group and use a distress call from a hidden speaker to draw them in. This time our plan worked perfectly. 4 young male lions approached, accompanied by their mother and aunt. A securely anchored carcass ensures the lions stay within range for safe darting. Two target males were darted and fell asleep on the carcass within 10 minutes. Their brother didn't mind at all and was evidently happy to have more food for himself. Once we were sure the lions were under deep sedation, their ears were blocked and blindfolds were placed to protect them from sound and light, which could disrupt the anesthesia. Lifting a 140-kilogram lion onto the pickup took many hands. An intravenous catheter was inserted for administering anesthesia top-ups. And our team of vets, nurses and volunteers closely monitored them throughout the procedure. For the vasectomy, an 8-centimeter incision was made on each side of the penis, removing several centimeters of the vas deferens. This ensures the lions maintain testosterone levels and mating behaviors, but prevents reproduction. Absorbable sutures closed the incision, and both lions received painkillers and long-acting antibiotics. After the procedure, they were placed on the ground. And once the reversal drug was administered, they recovered from the anesthetic within 20 minutes and joined their pride shortly after. Majetti's transformation is a testament to dedicated conservation efforts, ensuring a balanced and thriving ecosystem for generations to come. Okay, so yeah, I hope this gives a bit of an overview of all the aspects that I mentioned, how to approach it, and then how to do something like a vasectomy. So now I will just touch a little bit on basically just two other species, the cheetah and wild dogs. So common reasons for cheetah, why they would have to be immobilized, is to put tracking collars on, to capture them after leaving a protected area, or to capture them and then relocate them to another park to ensure genetic diversity, and also to administer medical treatment if injured and if it is indicated. Obviously, cheetah, they are much more difficult animals than lions. They are much more threatened. They are literally living in danger of being killed by other larger predators constantly. So so obviously they are really one of these key species that we will intervene if they are threatened by anything. So they are much more, very closely monitored, and there's definitely reasons why we would have to immobilize them. They're very difficult to capture. They are not coming up to a call-up. If you're trying to, maybe with small, like we had cheetah cubs, one where the mom died, and we placed the call of a mother, and they came very quickly, but that is obviously because they were desperate. That is very unusual. If you have habituated cheetah that grew up somewhere with constant habituation, then it's very easy, but wild cheetah is very, very difficult. You can immobilize them when they are found on a kill, because then they are sitting there and they are eating, but you have to have in mind that the high risk of anesthetic complications is high, because you know that these animals, they have been running, they have been killing this animal, they might already have a high temperature. So it's often done, but it's very important to have in mind that the risk of the anesthetic might be higher, and that you have to very closely monitor them. So so it's tricky. It's very opportunistic. We tend to almost always have some drugs and collars for cheetah in the vehicle in case we come across a cheetah, because sometimes they are just lying on the road and they're very chill, and then you can get them. So it's very much opportunistic. We also have the opportunity to use tracking darts, which mean you place a dart that has a VHF signal, and then when the animal runs into the bush, you can easier find them again, because then you can use your telemetry and follow the signal and find the animal asleep. So that is also something to have in mind. But it's very tricky. When it comes to drugs to use, BAM is a good option. So butorphanol, azaprone, medetomidine, good option. Small volume in the dart that is needed, and it is fully reversible. So you can keep the anesthetic as short as possible, and then you can wake them up again. So like I said, there's a high anesthetic risk for any cheetah anesthetic. Hypothermia is the most common complication, and it is linked to capture-related stress. So the body temperature must be monitored very closely and cooled down if necessary. Again, like I said, we would use cool packs, and we would place them. We would cool the ears, like put cold water onto the ears and place these cool packs into the groin and under the front legs. And supplemental oxygen definitely helps, and IV fluids as well. So that's an absolute given that cheetah need to get, we normally give them half a liter IV fluids intravenously and another half a liter subcutaneously. So overheating, definitely a very high risk. Hypertension and respiratory depression is a risk. Capture myopathy, definitely real and high risk, basically leading then to kidney failure. And then we have cardiac side effects, especially when we have the medetomidine. And we need to, by all means, we need to avoid prolonged recovery by using fully reversible drug combinations. So that's why BAM is such a good drug for them. And following the reversal of the anesthetic on animals in the wild should be monitored closely for several hours to ensure they are fully recovered and they are not threatened by predators. Like I said, they are under threat by lions, leopards, and yeah, it's just very important that we are not the reason to give them a disadvantage and put them out there, and they are still half sedated. So we always keep a team close to the animal, and we make sure that they are safe and that we are really happy that they are completely recovered. There's actually, interestingly, there is a survey from 2019 that you can look up online, and it was shown that any sort of anesthetic in cheetah is always having a significant risk for mortality. Hypothermia seems to be one of the biggest complications, and the results suggest that the capture-related fatalities in cheetah does not have to have anything to do with the veterinarian's level of clinical experience or the immobilization agents used. They are just very difficult animals. They are prone to kidney failure. They are prone to heart failure. They are prone to hypothermia, to the stress-related capture myopathy. They are definitely animals that every time you dart them and everything goes well, and touch wood, I've never had any problems, but you always have to have it in the back of your mind that you do everything by the book. And even when the weather is cool, you just never take any chances. You do everything perfectly. You reverse them as soon as you can. And also when you transport them in the transport cage, you will just reverse them as soon as you can. And then last species, wild dogs. So we do, like in Malawi, we had wild dogs we introduced a few years ago in Majeti and in Liwonde. Common reasons for darting: to put collars on, capture them after leaving a protected area, relocations to ensure genetic diversity of this meta-population. Rabies is a major threat to wild dogs because of their social hierarchy and the way they act, and they live with each other, because they regurgitate food for the youngsters, the way they lick each other, everything that one wild dog does, the other one has to do as well. So it has a high risk that the saliva will transmit the disease basically to the entire pack. So so it's something to have in mind. And opportunistically, any wild dog that is asleep is always getting a rabies booster, because so if it happens that there is rabies, at least not your entire pack is dying. And yeah, obviously medical treatment if indicated, because in wild dogs, it really depends on who is injured. Like understanding the social behavior and the hierarchy is very important. And I think in general, when it comes to when it comes to wildlife medicine and any sort of immobilization of animals, it's not so much of what you could do as a vet, what you could fix. It's always about the park management. It's about what is needed. Does it make sense? If you have like a non-dominant wild dog, does it make sense to take this one into the boma and, for example, fix a fracture? Because you cannot keep an animal like that in an enclosure for a longer time, because it will not be accepted back into the pack. So it's it's often not so much what you could do, but what makes sense. And yeah, so that is one of the things. You might only deal with some of the animals if they are injured. And there's a lot around this. Like, we could have a whole hour just talking about wild dogs. And when it comes to the drugs that you're using, reversible combinations are very important. You need to send these animals fully up and awake quickly. And these are animals that I am reversing IV and intramuscular, because you want them up and back with the pack very quickly, because it's difficult to dart them anyway. And normally the pack is still hanging around and almost watching you when you're putting that collar on. So you want this all done as quickly as possible. You want to reverse them, have a look that they are fully awake, and then that they are joining the pack and that they are running away again with them. So minimize the stress, work when it's cool during the day, plan this really carefully, use a good drug choice that you can absolutely reverse again, monitor the animal closely when they are asleep, watch for hypothermia. It's very important that you give supportive care. They always need IV fluids. We give them oxygen supplementation. We have a pulse ox on, and you can see it can be really basic setup like this, but you can just make sure that you give this animal the best chance of a good recovery. And then my last picture is just this. So when you are transporting animals, like I said, you place them in crates. We have crates for all different animals, so different wild dogs, cheetah, lion crates. And usually, like in wild dogs, you don't want them to be fully awake in these crates, because they could hurt themselves by falling around in there. So normally what we do, if we transport them maybe for like half an hour or something into the boma, we just check every 15 minutes, is the animal all right? Is the head still okay? Can they breathe all right? Quickly just check on them. And then as soon as you're in the boma, you reverse them and let them run out of the crate. But it's just a very safe way. And obviously, if it's a further relocation, then you will partially reverse them and transport them like that. Okay, that's from me. Thank you very much for listening. The warthog in this picture was not hurt. This lion actually didn't mean it, but it was just, we took some amazing pictures close to a waterhole in Majetti. And I think this warthog was in for a bit of a shock on that day. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dagmar. I'm still laughing about the lion not meaning it. Okay. To our audience, if you have any question, please feel free to raise your virtual hand. For the meantime, I have a question. I see John Paul has. Okay, John Paul, I will give it to you first, then I will ask my question later. John, you can go for it.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Dagmar, for a wonderful presentation. My question is on coloring for higher carnivores. Do we use the same color, or it is specific to each animal? For example, can I use the same color for lion, then put it in cheetah? Kindly give some clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think my colleague Craig also gave a talk maybe a few weeks ago, and he only talked about the whole monitoring of the animals. So they are different collars. They are we have wild dog collars, we have cheetah collars, lion collars, and then obviously big ones for elephants and stuff. So they are all different. It's very important that they're different. And there are different considerations. In cheetah, the biggest risk is that your collar is too loose because they have such a small head, so the collar can move forward and it can actually be caught inside the mouth. And there have been several incidents where cheetah died because they couldn't drink and they couldn't eat anymore. So they are very specific, and we have to have them a little bit tighter than lions, for example. You also should never put a collar onto a growing animal, or you have to have a very close eye on them, so that they are not getting too tight. And also, from animal welfare reasons, as soon as a collar is not needed anymore, it has to be taken off the animal. So there shouldn't be any device on any animal without a purpose. So if the battery fails, you have to remove it, or you should replace it. So it's very important as well to have that in mind.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dagmar. And thank you so much, Marit. I see you've shared the link to the talk on digital technology. Thank you so much. And I can see we also have another hand from my colleague, Kirsten. Kirsten, go for it.
Hi, Dagmar. Thank you so much for your presentation. Very informative, and yeah, just amazing to get those insights and see it all in action. What I wanted to ask you, we had a program a couple of weeks back on contraception in elephants. And what I was wondering about, I mean, they didn't, obviously it's a totally different animal. And I was wondering why one would choose to do vasectomies versus hormonal contraception in managing lion populations.
Thank you. It's actually a combination that we are using. So we have started with contracepting females, also to have a faster impact, because you only take a few males and you then still have so many cubs. So we have a combination of contracepting the females and vasectomizing the males. I think it depends really on the park. It depends what is the situation like, how many lions do you have, and how big is the impact that the number of lions have. So I think, again, it's actually more like a management question. Mm-hmm. What does the park management want to do? Obviously, with the vasectomies, you're not disrupting the behavior. So that is probably the bigger difference. You know, these lions are still mating, but then they are not producing any cubs. The females, they are not actually cycling anymore, so you are disrupting the behavior much more. So I think in our case, we didn't get the permission for the vasectomies in a while. We got the contraception, we got the permission for the contracepting of females, and we had to start something. But I think it really depends on what are you looking at? What is the specifics in each park? But if you look at the vasectomies, you are not actually changing anything of the behavior. They still have the same testosterone level. They are still mating. They are just not having any results. So I think that's a big difference.
Okay, super. And why would one not do a vasectomy with an elephant?
Because the one animal you would really like to be able to reach the testicles are having the testicles inside, close to the kidneys. So yeah. There's actually, you would literally have to climb into the elephants. I think it's a shame that they're not accessible at all. And I think also like the contracepting in female elephants you can do remotely and from the helicopter. Like you don't actually have to do anything on the elephant. But no, that's not an option for the males, sadly.
Thanks, Dagmar. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for the question, and thank you so much, Dagmar, for the answer. Moving on, we have another question from Dr. Boaz. Dr. Boaz is asking, how do you determine the amount of IV fluid given to the patient, being a critical measure during anesthesia monitoring for hydration?
I have to say that we usually place the IV line to have it open for emergencies, because in a 150 to 200 kilogram lion, the amount of fluids that you would actually have to give, to to counteract the hypotension. It's a large amount. You can't actually carry that much fluid with you. So it's actually, yeah, if you calculate your maintenance rate and then, you know, and a really high rate, it's a very, very large amount. So yeah, luckily it's more that we have it for drugs and we give fluids. We always give, like, you know, I would say 1 to 2 liters, but if you calculate that on the size of the animal, it's actually a small amount. But yeah, so I don't think we can apply the same rules that you would really have to use, because we don't really have these the means to bring that much fluids with us. But I have to say, touch wood, like lions anesthetics are, they are very sturdy animals. So luckily these larger animals, we don't really see many complications. It's more the question of having them deep enough that it's safe for the team. So luckily we haven't actually seen them. And also, so if you're saying, okay, my patient is hypotensive, like I really have to interfere, rather than doing anything with fluids and with drugs, what you do is you reverse the animal. So I think that's probably the quickest answer. You're not really doing anything other medically. You reverse the animal, you get out of there, and you make sure that they are waking up all right. So in an emergency situation, that is your emergency response there.
Thank you so much. And there
Yeah.
is also another question from Henderson Nyerenda. He says, can't the lions be relocated to other parks instead of doing vasectomy? And how do you separate pride animals from the pride after sedation?
So regarding the relocation, it would be great. Yeah, it would be great for many situations. But in order to accept animals, you have to have a fenced, you have to have a secure fence. So, for our setting in Malawi, I can only say, Liwonde is the only other park apart from Majeti that could accept lions, and they already have enough lions. They have actually also started with population management there. Other parks. So lions, once you have lions in your park, they are breeding. They're very easy to have more lions. So I think it's actually easier to have too many. But when it comes to genetic diversity, there might be some exchange of genes that we could maybe transfer them as well to other parks. But it's very difficult to find people that are interested in a certain genetics of lions that you would like to transport. Regarding the pride of lions, it happens often. I mean, I'm sure every park is different, and I'm sure other lions might not be so laid back. Where we are working, we always have a ranger with us, carrying a rifle as well, to just shoot warning shots in case lions would approach too quick, too fast, too close. But usually once we move in and we're working on a sedated animal, and for example, in vasectomies, we put them on the back of the pickup, they move away. I mean, sometimes when you shine the light and you can still see them like 50 to 100 meters away, and they're just waiting. But we never had that they are actually coming close or being threatening. So we always have part of the team watching out and making sure everybody is safe. And it's nice to see when we're moving away and we reverse the lion, how their litter mates or their relatives of the pack actually coming close, and they are around again with the lion, and they are very closely. When we check up on them again the next morning, they are actually all together again. So we have some options of scaring them away, but it's hardly ever needed. We have them close by, and I'm sure in other parks it's a different story. Maybe if they had some bad experiences or something, but luckily we seem to manage it all right like that.
Thank you so much. I see there is another question from Dr. Funo, but before I give it to him, I have a follow-up on that, which I think you've already answered, but then I want to know if I've really heard you. So in cats, when you touch a cat, and it's very hard for the mother to get the kitten back because of the human scent. So does it happen as well in the lions when you have worked on them and do the pride?
No. No,
okay.
And it's also not tiny cups, so no. Luckily, there's no problem like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And Dr. Rufuno, you can unmute and ask your question.
So again, it's not really a question. I just wanted to just add on Dr. Dagmar's answer there about how do you approach and when you're dealing with a huge pride of lions. So I mean, it's not that difficult. Yes, you can scare them off. Sometimes we just you drive into the carcass where you baited them and then you scare them off. Sometimes I've once had difficult ones that don't want to move and you cannot recover the one that's darted. So I've had a lot of plans depending on the capture, what I want to do. So if I only need one lion from a pride, especially when I'm doing collaring or um or just removing a snare, I usually have a vehicle, a Land Cruiser, that I anchor the bait on that vehicle. So I call when they come, they focus on the bait. I dart the one that I want, and then the vehicle, when the one that I want is down, the vehicle moves away. So the other animals will follow that vehicle until, and sometimes they have to drive fast so they can get a chance to drop that bait. So so it's quite interesting, and you'll be surprised. There's another thing with lions, how strong they are. I've had a lion, a male lion, that grabbed an impala at the back of a vehicle, and the vehicle couldn't move.
Oh,
I'm
Yeah.
serious.
no. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Dagmar.
Thank you so much. No, that's great. Yeah, no, that's so true. They are not very loyal to the others. As soon as you can even like just move the lion away that's now asleep, drive away with it, and the others will just come back in and eat what's left over. Like the food always trumps any sort of connections to the other lion. So yeah, they just move away.
All right.
All right. Thank you very
One
much.
last question.
Okay.
One last question. Does exposure to the immobilization drugs, previous like exposure to the drugs, have an effect on the dose the next time you're making the animal sleep or recovery? Does it have any effect on the recovery or the dose that you're giving it the next time?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And usually we're not sedating the same animal several times. The battery of most of these collars, like it depends what collar you have, but usually we only have to change the collar after 2 years. So it's not that we are, repeatedly having to put them under sedation.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Yeah.